Alrighty, good evening. This is Jonathan Albin, and this is NycosRPG. We are here to talk about the nightly news report from the Gnome News Network. And there have been quite a few developments over the last week or so, and I think you, as viewers and participants of the stories of Nycos, will be quite intrigued with the direction the campaigns are all headed. There's been a huge amount of excitement over the last few days as many of the story pieces have started to come together into fully defining the tasks for the enjoined. So as we go over these, I'm sure that you'll appreciate and enjoy them. And I would love for you to like and subscribe to this channel, and also to hit all the buttons so that make sure you get all the videos when they are made available. Alrighty, so we are going to be covering all of the stories of Nycos that are currently in play. As the message here says, all the details may be revealed, but the villain himself remains concealed. I didn't add the word himself, but it works. Anyway, so we will be discussing the direction of the story as we go along. We will be covering the 4 game sessions that we have. 2 of them are at Board Games Paradise, one of the show sponsors, at 6 o'clock p.m. on Mondays and Tuesdays, and 2 of these are live stream games that occur on the Discord channel and are targeted to our Patreon supporters. So if you are wanting to be a part of the story and want the fast track to get into the world of Nycos, consider becoming a Patreon supporter at NycosRPG. Sorry, I did that backwards. Patreon.com/Nycos, and become a part of our community there, and therefore gain access to those 2 groups. Today we're going to be talking about them in order, but before we do that, make sure that you get it, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also, if you can, subscribe or at least follow the show here on twitch.tv so that we continue to gain all the benefits of both of our networks. Alrighty. So we're going to be talking about the details in particular of this out of the way. Alright, so we're going to start talking about the details of the Heralds of the Change, and we will be using the notes that I'm keeping in the Discord to keep me online, and if I happen to provide a little extra information for one or more of the campaigns, that is the nature of the beast. So feel free to stop and replay any portion of the video that might catch a detail that you might find interesting if you're following along on the campaigns. So first of all, we're going to be talking about the game on Sundays, first day of the work week, so to speak. Sunday at 1 p.m. is Heralds of the Change. That is the first of our live stream games on the weekend, which is weird. It's the first day of the week, but it's the last day of the week. Sundays are weird. That's why I just call them Fun Day and leave it at that. So our Sunday afternoon game played at 1 p.m. Pacific had the following details. All right, so the party had been waiting around for the opportunity to meet with the Lord Marshal. As it turns out, we couldn't recall his name or whether the players actually ever had known the name, so it caused a rather extended conversation that led to a huge amount of laughter, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but just know that we came up with the name of the Marshal and the title that he's been provided by the Master Imperator, who is Darken Val. So the Lord Marshal's title is General grievously wounded, and his actual name, as we came to find out, is Chisholm. Rickard Chisholm. And Rickard Chisholm, in the role as Grievous Wounded, is now the General and Steward Regent of the Empire on behalf of the Imperator of the Middle Kingdoms and of Florin in particular. In this rather terse discussion they had with the Lord Marshal, it became clear that he had plans for the adventurers who he acknowledged and recognized as champions of the era, and acknowledged their injunction and commissioned them to take the word of the Empire and its objective westward to kingdoms such as Salafort and Nyx. This was concerning to them because they already were on their way to Nyx, but they did not reveal this. So, as they made their arrangements to travel, they determined that the best way was actually to get out of town on the first available train, which was headed for Bastion in the north. And there was a considerable amount of stealth used and some fast footwork, and the adventurers of the Heralds made it onto the train just seconds before they would have been intercepted by the general's forces. And so therefore they were able to escape the city without his awareness of where they were headed. And so they were not on the train very long when there was a knock at their stateroom chambers, and a purser by the name of Antoninus Bellows approached them and let them know they were being invited to table with a certain associate that claimed to know them. They were a bit trepidatious when they approached, but they there met with Zanger, the master of the doors, who then offered them the benefit of some of his magics and also provided them with additional resources in the form of some of the longleaf tobaccos. After their departure to the north, they did receive a message which I have now posted in the Heralds of the Change channel, which basically addressed Stormcrow and the other enjoined and thanked them for accepting the task of going west and carrying his message, and rendering his sorrow for missing them at the station, and suggesting that he knew that instead of traveling via train, they had taken a vessel by sail. Of course, this would have been difficult leaving from Florin, but the suggestion that they had actually done so hinted at his cluelessness as to how they were traveling, unless, of course, this was a double entendre intended to capture them. But the keys they did receive were encrypted with letters, which have been recorded also in the Heralds of the Change channel for anyone who wants to look up those details. But they are safely on their way to Bastion and should be arriving there soon, and they are therefore free of the Kingdom of Florin for the moment. Alrighty, so having discussed the adventures of the Heralds of the Change, we'll now turn our attention to the Strangers in a Strange Land, which is the first of our role-play games played at Board Game Paradise in Redlands, California, Monday nights at 6 p.m. And so if you want to join that group, you can certainly do that by simply showing up at the store. They are endeavoring to run a full 4-hour session, and for the most part they do so, but the importance of getting there early is to make sure that your persona is developed, ready to play. So with the Stranger of the Strange Land, we're also returning to the notes page for them, and they are here. Alrighty. So they had initially completed the search of the Firefall region of Jezreel. They had recovered the young maiden by the name of Erica Kincaid, who obviously was utilizing a pseudonym as she was of Eldrin blood. And they found that she had basically been utilized as a conduit for a mystic's message, and by using their chronomancer was able to recover this backmasking message, so to speak, and verifying that the young lady had indeed been in the presence of the villain and was actually quite surprised and intrigued with the reality that it was apparently her grand uncle or uncle to some effect, and that the death of the Empress, the Queen, was not known to her. The party determined that she did have relatives there in the city, and so engaged with the in-laws, if you will, of the family, not choosing not to directly involve themselves with the Rivaldis, whom they had discovered were the parents of and the family of her father, and so they instead went through the Prince Callaghan, I think his name is. Okay, Kerrigan. I can't remember at this moment, but they went and spoke with him and discovered also that the destruction of the Eldrin community along the mountains was nigh unto complete, and therefore making orphans of all of the Primus that remain, and therefore potentially completing or clicking off yet another point on the purpose, the grand poem of the age. Of course, this conversation then led to a discussion and a visit to a party being hosted by the this Callaghan family. I mean, Kerrigan, Callaghan. I didn't write it down. I'm looking for it in the notes, and nobody else did. So, if I've got it wrong, feel free to correct me. And if you can, put it into the chat or into our Nycos notes on the website. I believe it's Kerrigan. I can't remember. Anyway. They did a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of data recovery, and became aware of considerable numbers of plots. Now, the biggest thing that happened in the episode, let me turn back to that. Wrong button. Oops, that's not it. There it is. Yes. So there was a conversation that pointed out that there has been the recovery or the discovery of an amethyst ziggurat, which was news to our chronomancer, who rubbed his hands greedily together and looked for additional information pertaining to where that might be. Our esteemed chef Asado has begun negotiations for an embassy to be established here in Eldrissar, or in the city of El Sadar, for the people of Jadaroon, and an alliance has also therefore been established with the family of Kerrigan. And of course, we had to have big hands, big waves for the armor building montage. The work has begun on the final stages of Bowden's full body armor that he's been working on, the suit of mechanized armor that he's been working on for so long. Very nearly got completed, and only a small portion remains, but that of course will mean a return to Firefall in the next episode, so look forward to that. I think we're going to be finding a lot more information. Now, another point here that to mention is that Marianne became aware of the gravity of the losses that the music of the Eldrin people represents, and has begun to have it bear upon her that she might take on the role of assisting them in recovering that which was lost and reestablishing the musical history of the Eldrin. So this has been quite a turn for our illustrious minstrels. So watch for that to make major changes in the game going forward. Let's see, anything else we need to talk about? Oops. Alrighty, next we're going to be going to the Skiffborn. And the Skiffborn adventures tonight were quite illuminating as well. They have as well begun to delve into the possibility of understanding the purpose more clearly, and in that light determined that their course would be set for the next of the Ziggurats, and by lots they determined that they would be moving towards the one to the furthest north off the coast of Nycos itself and out into the Blackwater. So with that in mind, they also determined that they would have the opportunity of passing over both Nyx and Salafort, and in the process of doing so being able to maintain their material benefits and their supplies. So so therefore they determined that they would travel to the now recovered library of Xavier, and following the naturally paranoid and difficult to discover steps to find its hidden location, they finally did make their presence known and introduce themselves to the new steward of the library, Xavier, the curious, curious Pongid. I'm trying to remember the way he always said it. The curious Pongid investigator, and in the process of actually inquisitive Pongid Rogue, that as they discussed with him their purposes, he did warn them of the dangerous and potentially lethal warehouse in the back, and also told them that the facility exacted a terrible price on any who would trade for the items discovered there. And the first of them who did so had considered his homework rather well, and having decided that his course was to try to discover a extensive source of magics of the makers, he did find himself in the presence of the Pillsbury guide to making things, and quickly and resolutely surrendered his destiny as tribute for the book, and so was able to depart with most of his dignity intact, but his destiny in the hands of the mysterious source of the warehouse. Without blinking, without hesitation, the negotiation was done. Next was Vinny, our resourceful Sec-Gen Avon owl person, who made his way within, but was rather unclear about what it was he wished to recover, and also not fully aware of what it would cost him. And it wasn't pretty. We soon said goodbye to our Avon associate, as he fundamentally paid for his choice, with his existence being drawn into an alternate dimension through the device that he so coveted. Third through was our established and newly discovered mech. Wasn't that who got next? I'm trying to recall. Let me go see if I've got it in the notes. I don't think that I do, but we will see. Yeah, we don't have any notes on that in particular, so give me a second while I try to recall. At any rate, eventually Albion was convinced to enter, and it wasn't long until, that's what it was. While he was in, they determined that they were going to try to recover the temporal bombs that had been in Vinny's possession. And as they entered the space to get them, Albion determined that he had something that could trade that was even more valuable. But as he recalled it, he brought it into possession, but in the process also repaired it, and so it became that which he would covet the most, which was an undamaged book on the various Ziggurats. And so he had to make the decision whether he was going to endeavor to take the time bombs or the book. And after much deliberation, he determined he would take the book, but the price of the sacrifice was very high indeed. It was his personal appreciation for and love of the partisan as a weapon type, and so therefore he had to forever surrender that function in order to make his way out. But he did bring with him the mystical book. So once the book was recovered and repaired, which means that now when they're done with it, they could actually return it to the library pending any other destruction, they then determined to study the book. And in a rather clever process, they endeavored to try to assist each other in the investigation, and it fundamentally worked out perfectly, although they stepped past the possibility of picking up a 8th page, and in that process they discovered that the information on the information that they were missing, that had been burned out of the book, was actually the information on the Alabaster Avatar, Alabaster Ziggurat, and therefore had given them access to the information on that location under the name of Scrape, but they did not yet have any information on the Amethyst Ziggurat, which is what they were looking for. They were able to sort of reverse engineer the die rolling, and were able to indeed find that final 8th book, and so they now have the complete information. There are apparently indeed 8 of these Ziggurats, which lends itself to the possibility that not all of them are prisons, or that there may be more Daemon than were known. So there's huge amounts of possibility either direction. So this will be an interesting forward into our adventures. Finally, we now go to our last but not least of our stories, and that is the tales of the voyage of the Arkan Eye. So, as we left our adventurers in the last episode, they were facing off against two monstrous beings known as Salamor. They were fundamentally armored tree sloths, and continuing to plink and pluck away at them, they were able to drive the beasts off without any further damage to their vessels, although I did endeavor to try as the Salamors to break the hull, but they were able to drive them off, and they realized that they needed to, well, they actually did decapitate one of them, so they actually have the Salamor head with them. They endeavored to find their way to the camp across the river, facing some precarious dangers crossing the water itself, but they did make it to the southern shore and then moved back westward towards the encampment. And they did rather botch their attempt to connect with the locals, terrifying them and driving them further away, to the point where the individuals abandoned the city and indeed left the adventurers in the camp in their own city on their own. So therefore they tended to the fires and protected the city, the village, not really city, but the village, from burning down. And eventually in the evening they did come across an individual. It was a child who was apparently being sent by the village back to negotiate, and had fundamentally tried to abase himself to the group. They in turn, apparently terrified the boy and drove him fleeing from them by trying to reach out to him through mental powers, and it so spooked him that he ran from the village. They gave pursuit, eventually catching up with him, and again terrifying the poor child, to the point where the locals then defended him by firing a volley of poison darts at the adventurers, who again were driven back. Later they decided to escape from this village and head back to their back towards their ship. When they got to the gatehouse of the torn down bridge, they did find themselves accosted by a small being, this fairy-like creature, very tiny and opinionated apparently, spattered words at them for some period of time, of which they couldn't catch but a few syllables, and determined that the child had insulted them with the word scown, and then the little being had referred to them as, or called out to them with the term pritar. And then once they had acknowledged the little being's attempt at speech, the little thing was heard to utter the term pinknity and point in the direction of the west. At this point, they've determined that the one word that this pinknity had said, this small creature had said, pointing generally westward, might actually be what it is called, and so that is what their current lexicon stands at, one word, which is pinknity, and they assume that word means the fairy person. We'll find more information out next week, because this group is arguably going to have the most challenging expeditions of all, since they can't even speak the local language. So more will happen on that in next week's report. Now, if you have liked what you're hearing here, make sure that you subscribe and follow this show on Twitch directly, and also like and subscribe for more videos at NycosRPG on YouTube. And also, if you want to become a part of our community, check out patreon.com/Nycos, NYCOS. And of course, if you're looking for copies of the property, you can find the Dark Shards volumes available at NycosRPG.com. And for more information on the lore of Nycos, check out NycosRPG.info. We are at the half hour, so I'm right on keeping with my shows. I want to thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next episode. Remember, we record Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. Pacific time, and we are also at the game store 6 until 10 on Mondays and Tuesdays, as well as special events on the stores on Saturdays. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. This is Jonathan Albin, Nycos RPG.